You think you know Iran. You see the images on the news, cities, deserts, mosques with golden tiles, political tensions that never seem to end. You think you have a reasonable picture of that country, but what you've never seen on the news, what rarely appears in travel guides, and what no government, neither the Iranian nor the American nor any other, seems eager to broadcast widely, is this. Beneath real, inhabited, bustling cities, there exists another city, complete, functional, with corridors, rooms, water systems, ventilation, and the capacity to house thousands of people for months. It's not a metaphor. It's not science fiction. It is verified, excavated, partially mapped archaeology, and it changes everything you think you know about that civilization. The story begins in 2006. In Nushabad, a small city in the province of Isfahan, central Iran, a man was expanding his basement. A common process, routine work. The pickaxe went down, the earth gave way, and suddenly there was a hole in the ground larger than he expected, much larger. He looked inside. There was a corridor. There were crafted walls. There was a structure that clearly hadn't been made by an accident of nature. The man hadn't found a cave. He had found a city. The authorities were called. Archaeologists arrived. And what started as a basement expansion became one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in the history of modern Iran. The underground city of Nushabad, also known by the Persian name Uwi, had been there the whole time, literally beneath the feet of those living above. An entire city hidden under another city. And the question no one asks, but which should be the first for anyone hearing this story, is this. If there was one here, what else is buried? Let's start with what was found in Nushabad, because the details are precisely the kind of thing that challenges the idea of a primitive or backward medieval civilization. The structure that archaeologists mapped out over the following years had three distinct levels of depth. The first level was approximately 4 meters below the surface, the second 8 meters, the third 16 meters underground. That is the equivalent of a 5-story building buried entirely in rock and compacted earth. Ceiling, walls, floor, corridors, everything hand-carved, with tools far simpler than anything available today. What exists in these 3 levels? Resting rooms, storage spaces, water channels, ventilation systems that ensured air circulation even 16 meters deep, chambers that served as lookout posts, with strategic openings facing the access corridors, clearly deliberate defensive positions. Passages that connect the 3 floors in a non-linear way, meaning any invader entering the top level would have extreme difficulty navigating to the lower levels without knowing the exact layout of the structure. This is not some improvised refuge cave. This is military architecture with planned sophistication. The issue of the materials used in construction deserves attention before reaching what is perhaps the most impressive detail of the structure. The walls of Nushabad weren't simply excavated. They were carved and treated with a layer of local clay mixed with ash, which upon drying creates a moisture-resistant and relatively impermeable surface. Over centuries of use, this layer was reinforced and reapplied. The result is that the internal walls of the underground city have a hardness that researchers describe as surprising for structures of this age. The humidity that would normally destroy underground walls in a matter of centuries was controlled by this simple but effective treatment. The corridors don't smell of mold or rot. They smell of dry stone. Ventilation deserves special attention because it's the kind of detail scholars mention in a footnote that should be in headlines. The underground city of Nushabad had ventilation shafts, vertical axes rising from the lower level to the surface, positioned to capture natural air currents and direct them into the structure. The temperature inside the underground city remains between 14 and 20 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of the hellish heat on the surface, where the Iranian summer can exceed 45 degrees. The ventilation system isn't mechanical. It doesn't use electricity, fans, or any modern technology. It uses principles of physics, pressure differences between the vertical shafts and horizontal corridors, natural convection, calculated tunnel geometry, to ensure proper air circulation. And it works today, more than 1,000 years after it was built. This is the kind of thing modern engineering studies with genuine respect. In 2018, researchers from the University of Shiraz published a detailed analysis of the ventilation systems of Iranian underground cities, including Nushabad, demonstrating that the passive cooling and air circulation solutions used by ancient builders are more efficient in certain climatic contexts than modern electricity-powered climate control systems, not as a historical curiosity, as a model of energy efficiency for the future. The article was published in a journal of sustainable construction engineering. It had little impact outside of academia. When was it built? The dominant archaeological estimate is that Nushabad had its first corridors excavated during the Sassanid period, the Persian dynasty that ruled from the 3rd to the 7th century of the Common Era. But the structure continued to be expanded and modified for centuries, with evidence of intensive use during the Arab invasions in the 7th century, the Mongol invasions in the 13th century, and possibly even the Safavid period between the 16th and 18th centuries. This means the underground city was in active use, serving as a refuge, a warehouse, a defensive structure for at least 1,000 years, probably longer. The experts who worked in the corridors of Nushabad identified, within the different layers of construction intervention, techniques that evolved over the eras but followed the same fundamental principle. Depth is protection. The oldest levels, attributed to the Sassanid period, show more rudimentary excavation but sophisticated spatial planning. Later expansion levels show refinements in ventilation openings, the positioning of lookout posts, and water drainage systems. Each generation that used the city learned from the previous one and improved what they found. And here comes the part that no popular history book tells with the attention it deserves. When the Mongol armies swept through the Middle East in the 13th century, destroying everything in their path, entire cities, libraries with irreplaceable manuscripts, irrigation systems that had worked for millennia, whole populations, some Persian communities simply vanished from the surface. From the Mongols' point of view, from the perspective of any outside observer, these cities had been wiped off the map. In reality, they had gone down. The population had entered the underground cities, closed the disguised entrances on the surface, and waited. Entire families, domestic animals, food and water stocks sufficient for months, while the world above was torched and massacred. Life continued 16 meters below. Iranian historians document this in general terms. Primary sources are fragmentary, but the physical structure tells the story with objective clarity. Nushabad's storage systems were large enough to sustain a community of several thousand people for an extended period. Not days, months. Archaeologists found chambers designated specifically for water storage, with waterproofed walls and strategic positions near natural fissures in the limestone that allowed for moisture accumulation. They found spaces that clearly served to accommodate small animals, goats, chickens, without contaminating human living areas. The organization is not chaotic. It is systematic. It is the result of generations of people who planned with care and experience how to survive underground for long periods. Now expand the thought. Nushabad is not the only one. It is tempting and convenient for certain narratives to present Nushabad as an anomaly, a unique archaeological curiosity. It isn't. It is a particularly well-documented example of a phenomenon repeated across the Iranian plateau and beyond. The underground city of Kariz, also in the province of Isfahan near Kashan, has a similar structure and comparable chronology. The city of Yazd, Famous for its wind catchers and its yakhchals, natural refrigeration systems that kept ice in the heart of the desert during summer, has a network of underground passages that locals have known about for generations, but which has been systematically underestimated by official archaeology. The Kermanshah region has excavated structures whose mapping is still in preliminary stages. In 2015, archaeologists working in Maymand, a troglodyte village in southern Iran, confirmed that what had been recorded as a collection of houses carved into rock was actually part of a housing system with more than 3,000 years of continuous history, where generations succeeded each other, living in the same excavated structures. Maymand was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2015, not because it was an exception, because it was the best preserved example of a pattern repeated throughout the Iranian plateau. But Nushabad and Kariz and Maymand are just the beginning, because there is an Iranian underground structure that is completely different in scale, in extent, in engineering ambition, and which most of the Western world simply doesn't know: the Qanats. If you've never heard the word Qanat, it says a lot about what the Western world considers worthy of attention and what it prefers to ignore. A Qanat is an underground irrigation canal. But that definition is like calling the Roman aqueduct system a water pipe. Technically correct, completely incapable of capturing the reality of what it is. A Qanat begins with a mother well, dug into the mountain slopes where the water table is near the surface. From this mother well, a gently sloping tunnel is excavated horizontally toward the inhabited plains, following the natural slope of the terrain with a precision that defies intuition of what was possible without modern leveling instrumentation. The angle of the tunnel must be exact, sloped enough for water to flow by gravity, but not so sloped that the water's speed erodes the tunnel walls. The margin of error in structures that can be dozens of kilometers long is centimeters. Centimeters over kilometers. Without electronic instruments, without GPS, without terrain modeling software. Every 20 to 50 meters along the tunnel, a vertical shaft rises to the surface. These shafts serve two purposes. They allow for the removal of excavated material during construction and facilitate regular maintenance of the system. Looking at the Iranian desert from above, from a plane, from satellite images, you see rows of circular dots on the ground that seem to have no obvious explanation. This is the visual signature of a Qanat. Each dot is a maintenance shaft, and the line they form is the trail of an artificial underground river that may be 1, 2, or 3,000 years old. Iran has approximately 37,000 kilometers of active Qanats, 37,000 kilometers. To give you a sense of scale, the Earth's circumference at the equator is just over 40,000 kilometers. Iran has, beneath its soil, a network of artificial underground canals with an extent that almost circles the planet. Some of these Qanats are more than 3,000 years old and still function today, providing water for agricultural and urban communities. In 2016, UNESCO inscribed the Persian Qanats on the World Heritage List. 11 Qanat systems were selected as representative of the entire network. The oldest among the 11 dates back approximately 2,800 years. The Zarch Qanat, near the city of Yazd, is over 71 kilometers long and is considered the longest Qanat still in operation in the world. Its initial excavation required generations of work. Its deepest level reaches 80 meters below the surface. 80 meters. For context, the São Paulo Metro, in its deepest sections, is about 40 meters below street level. Ancient Iranian engineers dug twice as deep, with hand tools, without dynamite, without computerized geological mapping. with knowledge passed down orally between generations of specialists called mukanas, who spent their entire lives digging and maintaining these structures, descending by ropes down vertical shafts to remove obstructions, reinforce walls, and ensure the angle was correct. The Mukans were a technical caste, passing their knowledge from father to son over generations. There were no written manuals. The knowledge was in their hands, in their eyes, in the ability to feel the rock's composition, to read the direction of underground moisture, to understand why, at a certain point, the angle needed a millimeter adjustment. An experienced Mukan could determine, by tapping the wall of a tunnel with a simple instrument and listening to the resulting sound, if there were cavities ahead that posed a collapse risk. He could estimate the presence of water dozens of meters away based on geological clues visible only to eyes trained for decades. It was a type of science, rigorous, tested, refined by generations, that simply didn't use the instruments the Western world recognizes as scientific. And you know what happened when modernization arrived. This tradition was gradually abandoned. Electric pumping systems were installed. Machine-drilled wells replaced decades of manual excavation work. The qanats that had functioned for millennia began to be left without maintenance. The generation of Mukans who knew how to repair them grew old, without passing the full knowledge to young people who preferred city jobs. Until the aquifers began to run dry, electric pumps began to fail during power outages. Open canals began to evaporate huge amounts of water in the desert heat, and suddenly, the solution that had withstood 3,000 years of history seemed much more attractive than anyone had admitted in the last 50 years. But qanats are water infrastructure. What governments really don't want you to connect is what happened when this millennial tradition of digging underground met the 21st century, and what it reveals about the strategic equation the world hasn't yet fully understood. In September 2002, the world learned that Iran had secret nuclear facilities, not on some open plain where satellites could easily spy. The Fordow enrichment facility was inside a hill in the Qom Governorate in central Iran, excavated 80 meters deep inside a mountain, built to be practically invulnerable to conventional bombing. When it was revealed by Western intelligence services, military analysts were impressed not simply by the fact that a secret nuclear facility existed. They were impressed by how deep it was, by how well protected it was, by the quality of the underground engineering applied to the project. Why did this quality surprise the analysts? Because to build Fordow, Iranian engineers used the exact same fundamental principle the Mukans used to build qanats for centuries. Deep knowledge of local geology, of the specific composition of the region's rocks, of how to excavate efficiently and structurally stably at depths that most civilizations never considered viable. This knowledge didn't appear out of nowhere in the 20th century. It was accumulated and refined over millennia. Modern Iranian engineers are heirs to a tradition that learned, before any other civilization in the world, that the underground is the most defensible space in any territory. In 2021, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps publicly revealed what it called missile cities, underground missile storage and launch bases excavated at depths that make them virtually immune to any conventional bombing. General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Force, described these facilities as stretching for hundreds of kilometers under Iranian soil. Hundreds of kilometers. A network of underground military facilities that mirrors, in function and concept, the network of qanats that existed 3 millennia ago. The logic is identical. Water needs to be protected from evaporation and the enemy. Missiles need to be protected from bombing and radar. The solution, in both cases, is the same one the Persian civilization perfected over 3,000 years: go down. The Western press covered the revelations about the missile cities. briefly, and then moved on to the next subject, without making the connection that would make that news truly understandable. Think about the real implication, not the immediate military implication, which is obvious. Iran is extremely difficult to destroy by aerial bombardment. The deeper implication, there is a civilization that spent 3,000 years learning to live and thrive underground. That developed, over generations, a culture of underground engineering unparalleled in the world, and that now, in the 21st century, is applying this accumulated knowledge to modern geopolitics with an efficiency that baffles military experts trained in traditions that never had to think so deeply about what lies beneath the surface. This is what governments prefer you don't connect. The Iranian government, for its part, has its own reasons for keeping certain things out of the center of the national narrative. The Islamic Republic, established in 1979, builds its legitimacy largely around Islam and the break with the Pahlavi monarchy's past. The pre-Islamic period of Persia, the Achaemenid Empire, the Sassanid, the achievements of Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, the Qanat engineers, the architects of the underground cities, is politically complicated ground. It is impossible to erase completely, because Persepolis exists, because the Qanats exist, because Nushabad exists. But it's also not something the current government wants to turn into a central point of national pride, because that inevitably raises questions about what existed before, about what was lost, about which of the invasions these underground cities were built to resist eventually changed the country's official identity forever. There is a deep irony here, and it doesn't need to be exaggerated to be powerful. The underground cities of Iran physically survived the Arab invasions of the 7th century. Their corridors remain intact. But the narrative about them, the public recognition of their existence and importance, was partially buried by a government that rules in the name of one of the civilizations those very cities were designed to resist. On the Western side, the reasons are different, but equally convenient. A politically isolated Iran is an archaeologically inaccessible Iran. Western researchers have found increasing difficulty obtaining research visas in the country since the '79 revolution. Joint excavations, which were relatively common during the 20th century, have become rare. The result is that archaeological sites of extraordinary importance are studied with limited resources, published in journals with restricted circulation, and never reach the broad public that National Geographic or the Smithsonian would reach if access were free. It's not a conspiracy in the technical and deliberate sense. It's something potentially more insidious. It is the invisible becoming invisible through inertia, through political convenience, through lack of continuous access. Iran has more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than Greece. It has more than Egypt. But how many people in any Western country can name a single Iranian archaeological site besides Persepolis? Now let's go back to the ground, or rather below it. In 2019, a team of Iranian archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar technology performed the first systematic mapping of portions of Nushabad that had not yet been excavated. The results were published in the Iranian Journal of Archaeological Studies and drew limited attention outside of Iran. The mapping revealed something that completely changes the scale of what we were discussing until now. The known portions of the underground city, the ones open to tourism, the ones appearing in photographs circulating online, the ones archaeologists had documented since 2006, represent a fraction of the total system. The corridors extend in directions that have not yet been physically accessed. The system is considerably larger than recorded. How much larger? Researchers estimated, based on radar data, that the total extent of the underground city of Nushabad could be up to 4 times larger than what has been documented so far. Not 40%, larger, 4 times. What has been discovered, catalogued, photographed, and which already impresses with its engineering sophistication, is possibly only a quarter of what exists below the city of Nushabad. And Nushabad, remember, is a city of modest size, a small city in a medium-sized province of a country of 85 million people and nearly 600,000 square miles of Iranian plateau. If a city of this size has an underground structure 4 times larger than what was mapped in nearly 20 years of archaeology, what exists below the larger cities? What is below Isfahan, which was the capital of the Safavid Empire in the 17th century and still has over 2 million inhabitants today? What is below Shiraz, a city that was the center of Persian poetry and culture for centuries? What is below Tehran, built over layers of human occupation dating back millennia, where the pressure of urban development prevents any systematic archaeological excavation? These are questions archaeologists ask at conferences. They rarely reach the general public. There is also a dimension concerning water, which is perhaps the most urgent of all in the context of the 21st century. Iran is in an increasing water crisis. Most major Iranian cities depend on underground aquifers being depleted at an alarming rate. In some regions, the water table is falling by 1 meter per year. In others, 2 meters. Cities are literally sinking. The ground, deprived of the water that always supported it and prevented its compaction, gradually collapses, and the buildings on it sink with it. Tehran has recorded subsidence of several centimeters in some neighborhoods. Isfahan, home to the most famous qanats in Iranian history, has sectors where the ground has measurably lowered in the last 20 years. And while this happens, the qanats that for millennia had managed groundwater sustainably, never withdrawing more than the natural cycle replenished, functioning by gravity without energy consumption, distributing water throughout the year in a way that minimized waste by evaporation, are being rediscovered as a possible answer to the crisis. Not romantically, not out of archaeological nostalgia. Practically, the Iranian government has launched programs to rehabilitate qanats that were abandoned decades ago. The logic is simple and brutal. The modern system is failing. The ancient system worked for 3,000 years. Maybe it's worth understanding deeply why. In 2018, a report from the Iranian Center for Scientific and Technological Research documented that of the 37,000 kilometers of qanats originally active in the country, about 22,000 still functioned regularly. 15,000 kilometers of underground canals had been abandoned during the 20th century, victims of rushed modernization that never considered the ancient could be superior. The rehabilitation program aims to restore at least 5,000 kilometers of the abandoned qanats by 2030. It is an ambitious goal that says something profound about where the Iranian civilization is looking to solve its most urgent 21st century problems. Down. Toward the past that is underground. Toward the knowledge that was buried along with the abandoned qanats. The most revealing aspect of everything surrounding Iranian underground cities and infrastructure perhaps isn't what is there. It is the pattern that all of this reveals. There is a pattern of thought, a deep cultural orientation that Iran, specifically the Persian civilization in its multiple forms over millennia, developed regarding the underground. Not as a place of death, danger or darkness, as many Western cultures have tended to see it, but as a space for life, protection, engineering, and strategic resources. The ancient Persian civilization learned, under conditions of extreme heat, frequent invasions, and severe water irregularity on a plateau surrounded by mountains, that the surface is unstable, the surface burns, the surface is exposed, the surface can be conquered and torched and looted. But underground, the temperature is constant, water is available, the enemy does not pass easily. Time destroys much less. It is this worldview, built not by philosophical choice, but by practical necessity and repeated survival, that produced the Qanats. That produced Nushabad and Kariz and dozens of other still partially unexplored underground cities. And that, in the 21st century, produced Fordow and the missile cities and the underground naval bases that the Revolutionary Guard showed the world with evident pride. No government wants you to make this full connection, because the connection says something that is simultaneously fascinating from a historical standpoint and disturbing from a strategic one. Iran is not simply building modern underground bunkers like any military power eventually does. Iran is using, consciously or not, a 3,000-year-old tradition of underground engineering as the basis for a national defense doctrine. It is applying knowledge accumulated by dozens of generations of muqarnas, of underground city architects, of planners who learned through accumulated experience that the underground is the most defensible space of any civilization, and that whoever masters the underground masters the territory in a way that no army on the surface can completely erase. This changes the strategic equation completely. It is not possible to understand modern Iran without understanding ancient Persia. It is not possible to understand the nuclear facilities without understanding the Qanats. It is not possible to understand the missile cities without understanding Nushabad. And while geopolitical analysts focus on the surface, on statements, arms contracts, economic sanctions, diplomatic negotiations, the deepest answer to the most important questions is literally below eye level. There is one more layer to this story, and it concerns not the past nor the present, but the future that is arriving faster than most people are willing to admit. Global warming is making extensive regions of the Middle East progressively less habitable on the surface. Climate reports from MIT and the IPCC project that by 2050, parts of Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and neighboring countries could experience heat waves that make human presence outdoors impossible for consecutive weeks. Not uncomfortable, physiologically impossible. Temperatures combined with humidity so extreme that the human thermoregulatory system simply fails, regardless of hydration or shade. Temperatures that kill healthy adults in just hours of exposure. What is the obvious answer for a civilization that for millennia learned in practice that the surface is dangerous? Go down. And Iran has, literally, the physical infrastructure, the historical, technical knowledge, the cultural precedent, and part of the physical structure already built to do exactly that in a way that no other civilization in the world has in a comparable way. Nushabad is not just a museum, it is potentially a prototype. When archaeologists excavate the corridors of Nushabad today, when they measure the efficiency of the ventilation system that keeps the temperature stable at 14 degrees while it's 45 outside, when they analyze how humidity was controlled for centuries without any active technology, they are not just documenting history. They are, potentially, studying the housing model of the future in regions of extreme heat that the world is actively creating with its emissions. Contemporary Iranian architects are already publishing academic works that propose integrating design principles from ancient underground cities into modern sustainable housing projects. The interest is not folkloric, it is urgent. The rest of the world doesn't know this, not because the information is secret in a technical and deliberate sense, but because the combination of political isolation, language barriers, lack of continued archaeological access, and geopolitical convenience for multiple parties has created a wall of invisibility around one of the most sophisticated and long-lived engineering traditions in human history. 37,000 kilometers of underground canals, entire cities carved 16 meters deep, ventilation systems that have worked by natural convection for over 1,000 years. An unbroken tradition of engineers specialized in the underground, whose knowledge was passed through generations and which, in the 21st century, was applied to the construction of facilities that challenged the destructive capabilities of the most powerful armies in the world. And beneath a small city in the province of Isfahan, an underground structure whose real extent has not yet been fully mapped, larger than everything that has been catalogued in nearly 20 years of archaeology. This is what is beneath Iran. This is what no government, the Iranian one, which has its reasons for not widely celebrating pre-Islamic achievements, the American one, which prefers you not to understand the real strategic limitations the Iranian underground imposes, the European one, which simply never invested enough archaeological attention to understand what was down there, wants you to connect clearly and completely. The surface is what governments manage. The underground is where real civilization happens. And perhaps the most revealing detail of this entire story is the simplest of all. It took a man drilling into his own basement floor for the world to know there was a city below his city. In 2006, the discovery wasn't made by a well-funded archaeological expedition with cutting-edge technology. It was made because someone wanted more storage space at home, went down with a pickaxe, and accidentally opened a door that had remained closed for centuries. Think about how many cities are still waiting beneath Iran. Think about how many people walk through Iranian streets today without imagining that there are rooms, corridors, water and ventilation systems designed with millimeter sophistication, 10, 20, 30 meters below their shoes. Think about how many answers to architectural, climatic, strategic and survival questions of the 21st century have already been answered for millennia and are waiting in silence in the cool and quiet dark below the surface of the world. The underground city of Nushabad has its doors open to visitors, a portion of it at least. You can go down. You can walk through the corridors 16 meters below the ground. You can feel the air move through the ventilation shafts that someone designed in the Sassanid period with a precision that still impresses modern engineers. You can put your hand on the wall and feel the rock that was carved by hand, inch by inch, by people who knew with absolute certainty, because they had already learned from the experience of past invasions, that the surface was temporary and that what lasted was underneath. But most of the city has not yet been opened. It has not yet been mapped. It is still there in silence, where it has always been. While the world above passes from one news report to the next without asking what exists 40 meters below the headlines, waiting.